What what's the word you would choose me to use? Being obtuse? I told Finley she was being obtuse, and she's like, "What does that mean?" Well, you're it. You know what movie that's from, right? Shawshank. Remember that? I don't have any updates on anybody. So, anybody else? Well, as I said, I asked Clark to word of prayer for us, and I let him go.
Heavenly Father, holy is your name. We're thankful, Lord, that you watch over us, that you communicate to us through your word, that you hear our prayers. We're thankful that you have answered so many prayers and encouraged us with your love and mercy. We pray that you'll help us to draw closer to you, to understand you through your word, and to understand how we should live to be pleasing to you. In Christ's name.
So we're second half, week 2 of goodness. And, part of the idea of goodness, it's about the things that we do. Good is really the descriptor of works or deeds or whatever we want to talk about. So I'm going to start with a good deed or a good work. There's nothing better than a good joke, right? I went to the library and I went up to the desk, saw the librarian. I looked at her. I said, "Can you show me where the books on paranoia are?" And she leaned over and got real close and said, "They're right behind you." Sorry. I heard that. And I'm just like, that's too good not to share. Right? They're right behind you. As I've gotten into the use of good in the Bible, there's 3 or 4 different words, but we're gonna talk about 2 of them, because what is this idea of goodness? We often think of it maybe more of a moral state. You're either good or you're bad, but it's really a descriptor of what kind of deeds or what kind of works that we're doing. So obviously somebody that is doing good things is doing good. That's the whole idea. And I don't want to bore you with the Greek term, but one of the words starts with a K and one starts with an A, and that's how I'm going to refer to them. Here's what's interesting. They keep getting woven back and forth together. So that it kind of gives us 2 sides of the same coin. We understand that idea. It's the same thing, but it looks different depending on your perspective and how you're looking at it. So that the K word, its concept of good is not the idea of virtue in the sense of correctness, or it's more in a simple moral sense. It's not really a moral description, but it's trying to convey something of fine quality, something that's good. If you go to a place and get a burger, and somebody said, "How was the burger?" If you liked it, what are you probably going to say? It was good. So it's that quality of goodness, something to be liked, or maybe the best way to say it is it's beneficial, praiseworthy. It's how that word is often seen or used. It's appreciated, right? Something's good, we appreciate it. You see a good movie and you go, well, I like that. It was good. I appreciated it. Yeah. It's not just, well, it was 2 hours. The A word, still meaning good as we have taken it, when it's applied to people, it has more of the emphasis of someone being capable, doing the correct kind of things. And when it's applied to things, we say that's a good thing. It means it had a benefit, right? So one's kind of highlighting the character, it was praiseworthy, it had value, and the other is more saying, well, it had benefits. Well, yeah. Yeah. So you can see how we're kind of splitting hairs there, right? They mean the same thing, but they're used in different places, and that's what we're going to talk about. But the most fascinating part is when they seem to be woven together, as if the writer, and particularly we're going to look at tonight, Paul, is trying to paint a bigger picture by using two words. Maybe one word wasn't enough to capture it. I heard this week that, did you know the English language has the most words? And I thought, well, that's really interesting because sometimes it seems like we use the word good, and in other languages they got 4 words for the same thing. So how did we end up getting more words? Maybe we just have more not good words, meaning not valuable. They're just words. I don't know. Interesting to think about. But let's start in Matthew. We'll do a couple verses in Matthew. And both of these passages, Matthew's using the A good, the idea of something having valuable, having value, having worth, being beneficial. Let's look at Matthew 12, verse 34. We're going to start in verse 34. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? So when we hear that, we hear that fight between good and evil, right? This dichotomy of, perhaps that's not exactly what Jesus was saying. If good here is something that is having value and beneficial, the word for evil here can mean worthless. So hear it this way. How can you who are worthless say anything good? You've experienced that, right? You've had, I experienced it today. Finley was in the back seat. And she was explaining to me how I needed to drive. There is just something special about to be 10-year-old explaining to you what you need to do. And it wasn't directions, it had to do with her permission for me being able to go a little faster. So I'm taking it out of the moral evil and good, but you understand this idea that if you're just saying stuff that's not of any value, do you expect that all of a sudden good things start coming out of the mouth? Well, no. He continues. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him. It's not the words. What is it? It's the good, it's the benefit, it's the intent, it's all of those things coming out that makes it good. It's not the clever saying, it's the impact of those words.
Something moral, because how could you be worth anything if you're evil? If you're morally evil, then how could you be, functionally beneficial to anyone?
Correct. And I hear what you're saying. And when I'm saying it's not evil in the sense of just kind of standing, right? It gets tied back to the actions and what those actions actually mean. Right. Good or evil. Right? If it harms people, what is it? Okay. That's the idea of this goodness here. Or let's look at Matthew 19, verse 16. Again, another aspect of this a good word is capable. It does what it's supposed to do. Matthew 19:16, just then a man came up to Jesus and asked, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life?" If you're going to get eternal life, what's his expectation? You have to do something good. And so I think Jesus' response is kind of jarring to this guy. Because, right, if I want to get what I want, you got to tell me what I got to do. We boil it down to some kind of transaction. And Jesus' response is, "Why do you ask me about what is good? There is only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep the commandments." So what are you hearing when he says there is only one who is good?
Goodness is an attribute of God. Goodness is godliness in this case. If you want to be good, be like God. Follow God.
That's the measure, right? And his laws are meant to produce that goodness. Not, how can we write the rules that benefit me regardless of how they impact others? The intent of God's law is to bring goodness to people. Let's use that as the source. So I think it's interesting that in both of these occasions, Jesus is highlighting this idea, this value that the actions have. The other thing that's interesting about this A word for good, it comes from the same root word for agape. What's agape? Love. That's the love. One of the words we put on it, that's love. The most literal meaning of agape is to care for. Well, certainly, that's love, right? That's when if we had a camera and we were taking a picture of love, right? What are we capturing on the videotape when we're filming love? Well, it's probably going to be somebody caring for someone else, right? Doing something. So you see this connection to goodness. Again, these fruits aren't just separate kinds of fruits. They're all tied together. When I saw that, I thought, man, that is so helpful. It's so interesting. That goodness and love share a root. This kind of love. Caring for. Now let's show the example of the K kind. Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 11. Dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives. And what was the word we put with the K word? Praiseworthy. Right? You're doing things, and what are people doing? There's something here to be praised. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your praiseworthy deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. So this idea of goodness defines our deeds. That's what defines our life. We're not good, and therefore we do good things. What are we? We do good things, and that forms us towards being good. And how do we know how to do good things? Yeah. As tried as a saying as that's become, it's accurate, isn't it? There is a filter that says, and the whole reason Jesus came and lived among us, he was sent so we could see. Because we don't just need to hear the words, we need to see it. So that's the way Peter said it. And because we're filled with the Spirit of God, that's why we act in virtuous ways. You remember the question that we just read in Matthew 19? He was almost asking it backwards, right? Okay, what do I have to do to get this thing, rather than how do I need to live that I'm in alignment with God, that I'm being like God? How should I be? Yes. So that's a difference in sometimes how we use good that I'm trying to separate. We're going to go to 1 Timothy now. And we're going to get to Paul, and several times in 1 Timothy, in several different contexts, several different pictures, he's going to use good works, good deeds. And he's going to interchange these two words. And then I want to connect it to something else after we've done that. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 9. Speaking to the women, and we talked about this a few months ago, but not specifically in the way we're going to speak to it tonight. Likewise, the women are to dress in suitable apparel with modesty and self-control. Their adornment must not be with braided hair and gold or pearls or expensive things, but with good deeds. And it's the A word. Things that are capable, things that have value, things that bring benefit. It shows something about them that braided hair does not. Are we consistent with that? Our culture spends a lot of time on outward adornment. And it's not that it doesn't have any value, but it's easy to get it overvalued, right? Let's go to chapter 3, verse 1. Now talking about elders. And this time he's going to use the other word. But to us it looks pretty much the same. If anyone aspires to be the officer, not officer. If someone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires good work. Beautiful work. That's another aspect of good. You're sitting down at Thanksgiving. The table's well decorated. The food is to perfection. The aromas are all coming up. You might say, this is beautiful. Or somebody else may say, this looks really good, right? There's an appealing nature to it. If you're thinking you want to be an overseer, what's your desire? To have works, to show works that have
beneficial to God's kingdom.
that are praiseworthy, that are appreciated. There's a little poem that I won't tell you the whole thing, but there's a line in it that says, some kind of help is the kind of help that helping's all about. And some kind of help is the kind of help that we can all do without. Okay, good works are ones that are appreciated. Other people are seeing it as of benefit, it is of help. It's good. Now we get to 1 Timothy 5, verse 9. Speaking of widows, and I didn't realize this when we talked about this a few months ago, because in our text, it looks exactly the same. No widow should be put on the list unless she is at least 60 years old, was the wife of one husband, and has a reputation for good works. And that good works is the K word and the word work. Ergon. We go, yeah. She has a reputation for praiseworthy things. One who has raised children, practiced hospitality, washed the feet of the saints, helped those in distress, as one who has exhibited all kinds of, my version said good works again, but it's the opposite word. Here, Paul, in the same verse, says it twice using those two words. So they're not different definitions, they're just create a greater picture. There is, in goodness, the idea of capability and benefit. But there's also the idea one more. Verse 25. Well, actually two more. 1 Timothy 5:25. The sins of some people are obvious, going before them into judgment. But for others, they show up later. Similarly, good works This is the K word, praiseworthy. Good works are also obvious, and the ones that are not cannot remain hidden. So again, just another example of Paul moving back and forth between these words, trying to create this picture. And this time he says, good works are what? Obvious. Right?
So some of them start out hidden, but they can't be, not forever.
Yeah.
They tend to come out over time.
Now, it may have been a while since you were a little kid. And maybe you did something, some little something. And you get home and your mother says, I need to talk to you. What's your first thought? Yeah. What am I in trouble for? But you're not in trouble because she talked to somebody else, and what did they say? They told her about something you did that they were really impressed by. Did that ever happen to you? See, those things don't stay hidden. It's not that you're looking for them, but goodness overflows. And good deeds at some point will be seen. And what happens when we see and recognize and those things that are praiseworthy, we praise them. What happens?
Praise somebody for doing good.
Yeah. What starts happening?
Most of the time I won't write a book.
Gets told. Andy?
Encourage the people.
You would think. Now, it's not praise for the sense of praise, right? It's not just for advertisement. And when I was a youth minister, a lot of the praise I gave was very private. If I saw somebody do something, I'd basically go say, I saw you. Keep doing that. See, they didn't need to get a trophy, an award. I mean, I'm sure you're all watching the World Cup. You may be following the game that just started on your phone right now, I'm sure. But we don't need a trophy. We don't need to be the world champions. But that encouragement matters. And so one of the things I want to have happen with our neighbor fund is as people not so much hear who, but what starts to happen. We hear of good works. What should that help us be motivated to do? More good works, right? That's how goodness works. And right now, it may shine brighter than ever. Let's look at 1 Timothy 6, 17 through 19. Command those who are rich in this world's goods. So very specific. That's how the NET puts it. Rich in this world's goods. What does the NIV say? Or says the same? Somebody have something different?
More it's kind of implied, not those who are rich in this present age.
Yeah. That's the actual translation. Yeah. It says world's goods. It's not just meaning the things, but you can be rich in a lot of things in this present age that aren't just possessions, right? You can have position, different respect. Not to be haughty or set their hopes on riches, which are uncertain, but on God, who richly provides us all things for our enjoyment. Tell them to do good, and it's the A word, right? Tell them to do things that are beneficial, that are helpful, that enrich, I think is the play here. And to be rich in good deeds, which is the K word. So right here in the same sentence, Paul uses both of them. Do good choices, make good deeds. And how do we do this? And I think this is always part of goodness. To be generous givers. Can you line up good and not have generosity with it? They really go together, hand in hand, don't they? Sharing with others. And that way, they will save up a treasure for themselves as a firm foundation. But in actuality, that word foundation is the word kalos, our K word. If you go to the Greek, it doesn't say foundation. So what's he doing here? A little word play. Good deeds are what? The very foundation, the very thing your future is built on. Not as a payment, I've done enough, how much do I have to do? That's not the question we're asking. How much do I have to do in order to be enough that I get to go to heaven? That's the wrong way to think about it, right? Because what happens when we do good and that becomes the way we live, it's a very foundation for life. And what does that goodness, do we get something for that goodness?
Probably so, but the question is, what's your motivation?
Yeah.
You do good things, and then maybe others praise you. But was that your motivation?
No.
To be praised?
No.
Did you just get in tune with God and want to be like God?
One of the hardest things for me is when I preach, very obvious public thing. I'm not looking for anybody to say you did good. But it is helpful when people say, and this happened Sunday. Somebody said, she said, that's the best sermon I've ever heard you do because I said something that hit her. Right? I don't think Sermon Sunday was any better than any of the rest. But for her on that day, she heard something in a way that she hadn't heard it before. That doesn't mean I did good, but it does mean there was good done, right? And I take satisfaction from that. I want that to happen. I want it to be helpful to people, but not in order for someone to say, you're good, right? Are you with me on that difference? And I think you probably all feel very similar to that. That's just an illustration, trying to put a picture on how we're working. It is helpful to hear feedback that the things we do matter and are beneficial, that's the praise. It doesn't mean because our salvation is taken care of, right? We're not trying to earn anything or gain anything, get enough points, qualify, because we've been qualified. But this goodness is our actual foundation. And I think Paul was doing something here by taking these two terms and interchanging and using them together. Because I ran across the phrase kalos kai agathos. And this was a Greek idea. Kailos is our K word. Agathos is our A word. And kai is simply and. And in Greek, when you do a word and word, it's usually bringing them together. And so this was a familiar phrase from Greek literature. And you wouldn't have said good and good, like we're translating it all over the place. It might be beautiful and good, fine and noble, superior and excellent. And this term came to mean to the Greeks the ideal and perfect man, the citizen, the man of virtue. And so perhaps here in 1 Timothy, taking that cultural background, Paul has been pulling out and pulling them not as Greek men and women to live up to some idea, but how is he transposing it? How is he transforming it? Well, by connecting it with God. Doing good is doing right.
The Greek concept of philosophy is, theologically, we would call it works righteousness. Be the virtuous man because you try really hard, you discipline yourself, not because you're inspired by God,
Mm.
to live in the image of God, but because you've been taught well by this philosopher and you're really trying hard to do the right thing. It's not the same language.
And sometimes we pick up that motivation, don't we? It still comes through in our culture, all the way back to the Greeks. And Paul is trying to paint, I think, a different picture.
All over the New Testament, it's really comes around to let the Holy Spirit work in you. Open yourself up to being inspired to be good. As opposed to make a big effort to be good, is open yourself up to God's will.
If you work hard enough, you'll be good enough. Right? Is kind of how it comes across. That sounds tiring to me. Because it doesn't ever seem to have a finish line. Because can you ever be good enough? So let's close with kind of where we started, back to Galatians. But we're going to pick up Galatians 6, verse 9. This is after, in 5:22 and 23, our list of the fruits of the Spirit. And Paul seems to be, from listing those fruits of the Spirit, he also realized perhaps this idea of the striving that can easily get to replace the Spirit of God as a thing that drives us and things that keeps us going. He says in verse 9, chapter 6 of Galatians, let us not become weary in doing good, the K word. For at a proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good, the A word, to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. Are we ever stopping? Are we ever saying, that's it? It's enough. I made it. I've done enough. Stop. Now I can do what I want. I've gotten as high as I want to get into heaven. It just sounds so ridiculous, doesn't it? So I understand the encouragement because all of these things get mixed together. But our acts of good are useful. They're helpful. We act nobly toward each other. Not when somebody deserves it, right? Not because they've earned it, okay, then I'll be nice to you. I'll do something good for you. I'll do something good for you if you do this for me. And sometimes it can appear, what's the use? Things are hard. Things are difficult. I thought if I did this, things would get easier, and they don't. But if our foundation is different, if it's built on goodness, the goodness of God, the goodness that we've received, then what do we seek? We seek the beautiful and the good, the fine and the noble, the superior and the excellent. And we find joy in being good. It's not a temporary state. That's what I'm striving for. Glad you're here tonight.